So have you ever been on the road and a car or truck passes with this whole heap of black smoke coming out of it and you end up breathing it in and perhaps choking or coughing or just feel bad? Well, that smoke has health and environmental implications. That's the focus of this edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson-Miller. We're going to be going to our expert guest in studio a little later in the program, but let's start out with Driven to Pollute, a special report by Giovanni Dennis.
When we think about vehicles polluting the environment, scenarios like this are obvious. People covering their mouths and noses from thick black exhaust.
Like a poison, man. You see when you reach a couple chain, you can feel the real poison down along your lungs. You know? Them things they're not supposed to inhale. You know, it give you a bad feeling, like you want to die.
And you have to cock up your nose and run out of it and go inside. Because you know, say, when you smell it, you know it come like down in your throat to have a scratch like, and your chest. Like when you smoke go down in you start to cough, you smell the gas different. The whole gas there, where you come out of it, terrible. I tell you.
For Kevin, who works on the road, it happens way too often, literally making him sick.
When that go down, you feel different, you know. You feel different? Yeah, you just feel different, you know. Like you can taste the gas then. We are coming up with the black smoke there.
The exhaust is not just from trucks, but also buses, cars, even bikes.
When I'm walking now, so a nuisance. Sometimes I have to cover my nose, honestly.
When you smell it, what does it feel like when you inhale?
No, man, sometimes I smell it feel like you want to choke. It's just so disgusting. I have to cover my nose.
But what is this exhaust, really?
Black smoke, the soot, it is really gases and particulates coming from combustion. You know, combustion when things burn, because of course it's the engine that is burning. So it had a lot of contaminants or toxicants.
Leonard Smith is Chief Environmental Engineer at the National Public Health Lab. A contaminant is a polluting or poisonous substance that makes something impure, while a toxicant is a toxic substance introduced into the environment, meaning it's poisonous. Contained in the visible exhaust, particulate matter.
The major air pollutant has to do with particulate matter, and particularly PM2.5. PM2.5 is really a small, very small size particles that can be inhaled into the lung and be transferred into our bloodstream.
Jodian Marston heads the Air Quality Management Branch at the National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA. Particulate matter, or PM, is a mixture of tiny airborne solids or liquid droplets. Wildfires, outdoor burning, vehicle emissions, and industry fumes can create particulate matter anytime. There are two kinds, PM10 and PM2.5. The latter, PM2.5, is the more dangerous of the two. It represents particulate matter that is 2.5 micrometers in diameter or smaller. For context, these are 3 strands of my hair. PM2.5 is 25 to 30 times smaller than a single strand.
The PM2.5 sized particle is readily absorbed through the airway if someone inhales it, and then it enters the bloodstream. So the more of this particulate matter that someone is exposed to, the more particles will be entering the bloodstream. Now, this is foreign to the body, does not belong within the body, and so it potentially sets up an inflammatory response.
Dr. Terry Baker is a pulmonologist, internist, and senior medical officer at the National Chest Hospital. Repeated exposure to PM2.5 is especially harmful for children, stunting their development. People with chronic disease are also at greater risk.
Sometimes I have sinus then. I know say allergy sometimes, trust me.
So it affect your allergies?
Yeah, man, it's very annoying. Very, that sometimes the big truck them.
Repeated exposure of persons to these particulate matter at high concentrations has the potential to affect not just respiratory health, leading to both acute and chronic conditions such as worsening asthma, the development of chronic obstructive lung diseases, increased predisposition to having pneumonias, ear infections, but it can also affect your heart health.
They may exacerbate condition that already exists. So if you have a pre-existing condition and you're in an environment that has consistently high levels of these toxicants, you're likely to die before that pre-existing condition takes you out.
Mr. Smith is concerned because ambient air and indoor air in Jamaica are worsening. Details on that in a moment. The visible vehicle exhaust we see and smell pollutes our atmosphere. But then there are the gases we can't see.
The carbon monoxide, the nitrogen oxide, the sulfur oxides at levels that are above the regulated or guideline levels that WHO, World Health Organization, sets are not safe.
And the gases like carbon dioxide produced by combustion engines like the ones in vehicles contribute to climate change. Carbon dioxide is known as a greenhouse gas because it traps heat from the sun in the Earth's atmosphere instead of allowing the heat to go into space. This is called the greenhouse effect.
These are the hydrocarbons that actually add to the greenhouse effect and the negative impact on the environment, erosion of the ozone layer, the climate change that we're seeing, the increasing storms, rising of the seas, the surges, the heat. I mean, we live in Jamaica. Nearly every summer it tends to be hotter, and it is expected that this year will be hot as well.
These gases don't just damage the environment.
You have carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, both of which will compete within the body, displacing oxygen. So potentially there is less oxygen reaching vital organs if someone is really inhaling quite a lot of these gases and at high concentrations.
Well, for me personally, I get like headaches after smelling that, or suddenly start feel bad. But honestly, with the population growing and everything like that, it's like something that, yes, it's going to affect us going forward more, I think.
The extra heat globally is not just about being uncomfortable. It's melting the Arctic ice. This leads to rising sea levels and causes more intense drought and storms. But polluting vehicles are also contributing to what experts confirm is an emerging problem in Jamaica: worsening outdoor and indoor air quality.
Indoor air levels that we are seeing are typically above the WHO limits. So we do have a challenge with indoor air quality as far as meeting WHO guidelines are concerned.
The World Health Organization guidelines stipulate annually no more than 5 micrograms of PM2.5 per cubic meter.
We, on average, for indoor air quality, we're at about 10.4. So we're definitely above the limit. And in many spaces, it's well above that from indoor air.
More than double what the required.
Right.
That's what we see.
Yes, that's right. Definitely, it's about double the revised WHO guideline is, because the WHO has reduced its limits because the previous limits they felt were too high and were still causing deaths related to to air quality in general. So the 5 microgram per meter cube as the annual average is their current limit, and we're seeing definitely above that, up to twice as much as that. That's correct.
The issue was discussed at a February 2025 meeting with public health and environment officials.
All the stakeholders came together to look at ambient air in general, and of course, vehicle emissions would have been a part of that conversation as well. And the direction that they are taking, of course, is to try to make the case that there is a concern with air pollution in Jamaica, an emerging concern, and we need to be paying attention to it.
Paying attention to it because this affects people's health. In fact, the World Health Organization notes air pollution kills an estimated 7 million people worldwide every year. WHO data show that 9 out of 10 people breathe air containing high levels of pollutants. The concentration of pollutants in the ambient or outdoor air is increasing.
Enough time I walk on the road, they truck them and they look at dirty taxi them. Them always look at the dirty smoke and affect my nose, make my stomach hurt me. Government have to do something about it and forget to stop off it.
What we have seen from the PM 2.5 data, and this is from monitoring stations that we have in some of the urban areas rather across the island, is that some areas have concentrations that are higher than our local standards.
Remember, Jamaica's standard for acceptable levels of daily exposure to PM 2.5 more than doubles what the World Health Organization currently recommends. WHO recommends 15 micrograms per cubic meter. Jamaica allows 35 micrograms per cubic meter. But why does our standard differ from the internationally recommended guidelines set by the WHO?
Well, we have to consider several factors when we're establishing standards, and some of that includes what our background concentrations are. So while we are at the 35 microgram per cubic meter, we hope that over time we'll be able to tighten those standards to meet or align with WHO guidelines.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with Driven to Pollute. Let me remind you, you can WhatsApp us. It's 876-254-0693. That's 876-254-0693. Give us your first name. Give us your general location. We'll soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're talking about air pollution, vehicle emissions. Before we go back to our special report, wanted to get some initial comment from our expert guest in studio. With us, we have the manager of the Island Traffic Authority for the Spanish Town Road Service Hub, Devonnie Wilson. Also with me in studio, Director of Environmental Health in the Ministry of Health, Michael Williams. Program Director for Environmental Health at the University of Technology, UTech Jamaica, Andrea Hardware, and President of the Jamaica Climate Youth Council, Davia Hilton. Really great to have you all. Thank you so much. I'm going to start with Mrs. Hardware. Give me your initial impressions of what we've been seeing and this issue.
Sorry. My initial impression is that this discussion that we are seeing here in this presentation is long in coming. We have had the issue, we have been talking around it a lot, but I believe to use a expression, it is time that we start addressing the matter. We have not seriously addressed the matter. I think in 1997, the State of the Environment report highlighted quite a number of issues that came out in the report, and there were some commitments to correct those problems. Now we are 2025. The 2017 one, I think, indicated that they did something, for example, the Ambient Air Act and so on. But I think we stopped there, and we are collecting data now. We're collecting data where we can in terms of the sites, but I think there needs to be more done. And I think the discussion here I hope would take us there, at least point us in some direction as what we need to do, because there is an issue of not only public health, but environmental health, and we know both of them. There's an interaction, a relationship that is what we are doing now is unsustainable. and needs to be corrected.
Okay, lots there I want to get into, but let me get initial comments from our other guests. And Mr. Wilson, let me come to you because you guys actually see a lot of the vehicles that are coming in. So tell me in terms of what you are seeing.
Well, at present, the ITA does do emission testing, but it's to a certain level. We are in the stage now of implementing, a more stringent emission test protocol. But it is done in phases. The Road Traffic Regulation 2023 empowers us now to do that kind of testing. So we do inspections as it relates to smoke being emitted from exhaust, and that the exhaust system is fitted with a catalytic converter. Phase 2 now will require specialized equipment, which we are in the process of procuring. This now will take us into the more advanced stage where you will go to the examination depot and you will see an inspector push a probe into the tailpipe of the car to read the harmful gas levels which are being emitted.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, lots in there I want to get into, but again, we're getting initial comments. So let me come to you, Davia Hilton, and tell me what you see when you watch that piece so far.
I felt really, I felt real good about the piece that they really went into it, talked to people on the street, went into all the issues, went into climate change and talked about everything from a broad perspective and then as well from the underground perspective. So it's lovely that the conversation is being had because it's one that's needed for a long time, as Mr. Dove said. And I hope that we can move towards the solutions that we need much faster because the time from which it should have happened plus what's happening now, it's all accumulating on us. So at this point now we need far more drastic action than we would have needed if we had been on track.
Okay, and for you, Mr. Williams?
Well, we saw ordinary Jamaicans crying out against pollution in the country. They are just coming back from the Second World Air Pollution and Health Conference in Cartagena, Colombia. And when we look at the results, the impact of air pollution around the world, it is frightening. We're talking about 8-9 million deaths every year because of air pollution. Come back home, you go to Children's Hospital, the amount of asthma cases, right around your communities. And so it's a real thing. It's not a joke. The days when we could say that Jamaica has pristine air quality, those days are no longer here.
Certainly not in the urban centers.
Definitely not. Definitely not. And it's getting worse because what you have now, because of the transportation issues, every jack man and woman wants to own a vehicle. And so you are multiplying the problems several-fold. And the used vehicle, as we all know, will pollute more than the new brand vehicles.
Well, I tell you what, that's a fantastic place on which to take the break because we're going to be picking up and looking at some of those issues in part 2 of our special report, Driven to Pollute. Stay tuned and remember, we want to hear from you as well. So you can WhatsApp us and our WhatsApp number is 2540693, 876-2540693. Give us your first name, your general location. We soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us. So have you ever been affected by, dirty smoke coming from vehicles on the roads? Rick on X says yes, especially when running and jogging on the streets and those vehicles pass by. Remember our WhatsApp line, 876-254-0693, 876-254-0693. Let's go back now to our special report by Giovanni Dennis, Driven to Pollute.
Areas with consistently high levels of PM2.5 include Spanish Town, Spanish Town Road, and other urban centers like Halfway Tree and Montego Bay. All have high concentration of vehicular traffic. NEPA's 2024 data for Spanish Town shows peaks or elevated PM2.5 levels were generally seen between 6 and 10 a.m. in the mornings and 6 to 9 p.m. in the evenings. Vehicular emissions therefore have a significant impact on the air quality in Spanish Town. For Halfway Tree, elevated PM2.5 levels are generally seen between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. The data therefore indicates that the high volume of traffic within this area affects the air quality throughout the day. Monitoring at Crossroads began in 2024, but already the PM2.5 levels are high. Data for Spanish Town Road is also recent. Still, in 2024, the daily threshold was exceeded 68 times.
We know that vehicular emissions are really impacting our urban areas.
NEPA notes that in addition to vehicular traffic, Spanish Town Road is also impacted by frequent open burning activities in the area. NEPA only has monitoring sites in Kingston and St. Andrew, Maypen, Montego Bay, Spanish Town, and Manchester.
The monitoring is not sufficient. We would have only been able to expand the network to include just about 5 parishes and 10 urban areas within those parishes. So there is need for expansion.
In truth and in fact, it's not really an emerging issue. The actual assimilation of the data in a way that can make the case very clear is really for us emerging in terms of our ability to harness that data to present to our stakeholders.
So what does this mean? How do we fix or solve this growing problem? First, let's look at our laws. The regulations for the Road Traffic Act 2022 on page 274 under environmental standards require that imports of used vehicles meet the in-use emission standards for the country or jurisdiction of origin. So, not Jamaican standards, but the standards of the country the used cars are coming from. But a 2024 study by researchers at the University of Oxford found that used vehicles sent from Great Britain to lower-income countries fail to meet British roadworthiness standards, are more polluting and less fuel efficient than those sent to be scrapped. Exported used vehicles generate at least 13 to 53% more emissions per mile than those that are scrapped or on the road in Great Britain. Dr. Saul Newman is one of the authors of the study.
We looked at every single privately registered vehicle in the UK. So we looked at over 65 million vehicles. And across all of these vehicles, we are consistently sending dirtier cars overseas than the ones we scrap. So if we remove this double standard, we have an enormous opportunity to clean up emissions in the developing world, simply by applying our own standards to the vehicles that are sent offshore.
If it is that the countries that are exporting vehicles don't have the measures in place to say that, listen, we cannot export this to another country, it is not safe, it can have potential effects on the population, potential negative effects on the country's environment, then we too have a responsibility. The measures need to be at both points.
It's all linked to what we refer to as climate justice and inferences, in the sense that why are we assisting them when we should be the ones being assisted to reduce our emissions? So we are being burdened literally with their emissions from vehicles that may not be up to scratch literally. And here we are importing them at sometimes significant cost, but we are really adding to our own emissions load.
But it's not just Great Britain that is exporting polluting, dirty vehicles to the developing world. A 2020 United Nations Environment Programme study noted millions of highly polluting used cars from rich countries are being dumped on developing nations. Between 2015 and 2018, some 14 million older, poor quality vehicles were exported from Europe, Japan, and the US. Up to 80% failed to meet minimum safety and environmental standards in the exporting countries. as well as causing accidents, these cars make air pollution worse and contribute heavily to climate change.
That's a very strong statement, and I can understand the sentiment. I don't know if I would say they're dumping their garbage. There's a saying that what is garbage to one is treasure to a next. I'm just saying that as the country doing the importation, we need to have the legislation.
To put a brake on this fast-growing problem, Jamaica implemented a pre-shipment inspection regime 7 years ago in 2018. But concerns have been raised by dealers. Jamaica imported just under 51,000 motor vehicles in 2022, roughly 26% more than the just over 40,000 in 2021. This is coming from just under 38,000 imports in 2018. We've asked the Jamaica Customs Agency for a breakdown of the data in the past decade. But from what is publicly available, the number of used cars imported is increasing, as well as the number of dealers, another growing concern.
It is something that we have raised with the government as it relates to the things that are needed with the entry of coming as a used car dealer. I believe it needs to be stepped up.
Regulation, I think there needs to be better regulation.
Yes, better regulations in terms of assessing the persons, finding out where they're getting funds from and all of that. So I don't believe that proper vetting is done in that regard.
For Linval Hamilton, the used car industry needs better regulation.
There's much to be desired as it relates to the government really regulating the industry much better. It is something that we have been talking about for quite some time.
Matthew Samuda is Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
There is no doubt that Jamaica has the ambition to electrify its fleet, both public and private. The public should also take note that of the last 100 buses that came into Jamaica as part of a public infrastructure, that is CNG as opposed to heavy fuel oil. So the government is already changing out the public fleet. We also gave tax restructuring to facilitate electric vehicles to make them more attractive. It's why there are 4 new electric car brands in Jamaica.
To reduce the number of internal combustion engine vehicles, the government has implemented tax relief measures to promote electric vehicles, EV, adoption, including a reduction in import duties from 30% to 10% and a 5-year exemption from vehicle license fees for electric vehicles that are 3 years old or less at the time of importation.
They are cleaner, and cleaner meaning that they emit less of these toxicants. One of the additional effects of vehicle emission in particular, carbon monoxide is also a combustion gas, and carbon monoxide is that big thing when it comes to climate change, global warming.
Linval Hamilton says there is an increase in demand for hybrid vehicles that use both fuel and electric charge.
For the past 3 to 4 years, we have seen an increase in the demand for the hybrid vehicles, and this is because consumers have found that it's very beneficial in getting those type of vehicles as it relates to the fuel efficiency.
Electric vehicles are being touted as a silver or golden bullet. But are they?
Again, I admire your choice of words, because a bullet, whether it's golden or not, can cause serious harm. Electric vehicles have been touted to be much better for the environment for the same reasons, in that they tend not to be releasing this particle or the degree of particulate matter or the degree of these gases that we see coming from vehicles that use gas or diesel. That being said, there are still concerns as it pertains to the electric vehicles, and we definitely need more work in this area. Remember that these vehicles is not that they're running on air. They're running on electricity that has to be generated from somewhere.
The Oxford study calls for the UK's world-leading vehicle emission standards to be applied to all exported vehicles, which would see cleaner instead of dirtier vehicles sent to lower-income countries. Such measures would reduce economic burdens of vehicle ownership, as cleaner vehicles require lower ongoing maintenance and fuel costs, and align with increasing cleaner air and clean action calls.
If our big brothers are sending out these vehicles, we need to have the legislation in place to have these vehicles checked, to ensure that these vehicles meet safety requirements as pertain to our laws, that we're not causing more harm than good. We need to be cognizant that it's not just a bother to be behind this bus or this truck or this car.
Are you satisfied that that is happening right now, that we're doing enough checks to ensure that there's not more harm than good happening?
With the explosion of the number of second-hand vehicle lots about the place, I surely hope so. I have seen where the government has had their policy framework, whether or not it is being enforced and how much teeth the law has, I'm not quite sure of that.
In the meantime,
if you see such a vehicle, you might not be able to get away from it then and there. But if it means putting up your windows, changing lanes, if you're in a public transportation and trying to see if the driver can go elsewhere.
For Leonard Smith, a better national conversation is needed.
We need to look again at town planning, We need to look again at green spaces. We need to look at the choice that we make as individual Jamaicans, because if everyone decides that they want a car, we then have to actually think, is this really what we want our government to do? Give us open the door for us to everybody to be able to own a car. We need to start thinking of different ways that we should be, different choices that we need to make concerning transportation.
You have to balance their competing needs. Your population requires transportation, modes of transportation. You may not be able to go totally EV or totally electric vehicles, so that the importation of these foreign used vehicles is a stopgap measure. What I think is appropriate and what has been done in a number of countries is that you limit the age of the vehicles that are being imported, in the sense that you're bringing in vehicles now that have reduced emissions. So in other words, you're not taking the worst of their worst. You're trying to take the best of what is available within that mechanism.
Reporting for All Angles Investigates, I'm Giovanni Dennis. This story was published with the support of the Caribbean Climate Justice Journalism Fellowship, which is a joint venture of Climate Tracker and Open Society Foundations.
All right. Thank you so very much, Giovanni. And before we go to the break and then come back with our guests, couple of your comments on our WhatsApp line 2540693. Lloyd says, government makes it very difficult for ordinary Jamaicans to buy a new vehicle, so we will continue to have vehicular pollution. Another viewer says, lots of issues here, different fuels, engine size will mean different, I have no idea what this is, STDS, standards. There you go. Thank you. Will most of our vehicles be able to meet these standards? And if not, where are the experts to diagnose and fix? And Luke in St. Elizabeth says electric vehicle may give off cleaner emissions, but not all people can buy them or maintain them. In addition, some professions require a vehicle where there's currently no electric alternative in the country. Keep your comments coming, 2540693. When we come back after the break, our experts weigh in. Stay tuned. Okay, air quality and vehicle emissions in Jamaica, talking about that and what do we need to do. Don't know if we can cover that. We probably need a whole program or more on that. But here are a couple of your comments. One viewer says, why do you need equipment to test air quality when you see a bus coaster coming up Halfway Tree Road and the smoke is so thick and black you can't see anything beside or behind it? I live on Halfway Tree Road. For 47 years, I have never seen one taken off the road. Donovan in St. Anne says, with a viable rail service, trains for moving commuters and cargo reduce pollution and congestion. And we have as well, Kathy in Kingston said, I hear there's a phenomenon known as black lung, normal in city dwellers, not found in those from rural areas who have the expected pink lungs. Is this something you can fact check? Thank you all so much. Keep those comments coming in, 2540693. So having heard all of that, Mrs. Hardware, what do we need to do?
I think the efforts need to be multi-sectoral, and the efforts need to be wide-ranging, can't be just one at a time, and they must be simultaneous as well. So apart from education, apart from trying to test as we do now, we must decisively decide what it is that we want in terms of control of those emissions. Do we want to, like you had said, Mr. Williams, earlier, that our society we really like our cars, and mainly because our transportation system is what it is. We know that the government says that they are rolling out electric vehicles, but there needs to be more. There needs to be more as it relates to for example, the vehicles coming in. Even though they may come in, let us say they come in with our standards, with the standards, and they meet it, we are seeing issues of maintenance. So the condition of the vehicle may come in just fine, but we know locally maintenance is going to be an issue.
So we need to tighten up on what we're letting in?
Not necessarily so, yes, to some extent, but I'm saying there was a proposal, and there's still a proposal for the emissions standards for Jamaica. It has been sitting from 1997.
Meaning for those standards
for Jamaica
to be improved?
No, they have not. I don't believe they have been gazetted.
They're included in regulations.
Okay, so
regulations.
Okay, so we need to start using them, and we're seeing piecemeal. You're saying, we have now put in on the buses, which is good. Those emission controls, but we need to have it wide-ranging. For us to see any meaningful change, it has to be wide-ranging. You know, when we were bringing in vehicle, and they said the ozone are the issues, and we took a stance to say we're not taking any vehicles with these gases in, and right now you can't find a car with that issue. So yes.
So Wilson, pick up on that issue with the standards and the emissions, because you were saying earlier in the program that there is provision now to do proper testing.
Yes, and I will read from the Road Traffic Regulations 2023, section 66. It states that a person shall not operate on a road or vehicle where the exhaust or smoke from the engine exceeds the Jamaican vehicle exhaust emission standards, which is specified in Part A of the 8th schedule.
Okay.
Exhaust, Part B of 66B, exhaust or smoke from the engine is so thick as to cause a nuisance to or obstruct the vision of other road users.
But as my viewer was saying, though, all you have to do is walk out onto the road, and we can just point and say, this one must be in breach of standards.
And if you're seeing it, it's way past the standards.
What's going wrong? There's a gap.
Well, the age of the vehicles could play a part. But, you know,
I mean, that fact that they're still on the road, though, doesn't
it? Yes, so we do have operations where we remove those vehicles once they are tested and found to be not in accordance with the regulations. So if they are smoking excessively, then those vehicles are taken off the road. The plates are removed, and the vehicle has to be repaired before the plates are given back.
Okay, I guess my question would be then, we can just walk out on the road, though, as I was saying, and we're still seeing them. So is it that we need greater enforcement, or what?
Well, that will have to be done. We are doing it, but not all times we can catch all vehicles.
All right. Mr. Williams, let me bring you in here, because I was listening to the report speaking about the number of people dying worldwide as a result of air pollution. Do we even know our situation here?
Studies have been done, Dion, and they have not been published as yet, but for attributable deaths to air pollution in Jamaica, I think we will be getting those results shortly. But I can say...
You're speaking very diplomatic. When you say studies have been done but not published, what that mean?
Well,
are they being hidden from us?
No, not being hidden.
You're sure?
Yes, they are.
If I am sure. I can get them.
As I said, we're going through the process of looking at the data, and also compiling the data and looking at the,
So these are current studies?
Yes, based on, okay, so PAHO and Ministry of Health did a health impact assessment over, I think it was a 4-year period of ambient air quality, 2.5 PM. And we have found that levels in some of our towns greatly exceed WHO limits. I think Spanish Town was 22, and we're talking about WHO recommending 5 micrograms per cubic meter. In Mandeville, I think it was about 11 going up. Generally in Jamaica, we're looking at 13. So there are some areas that seem to have higher pockets of concentration of PM 2.5. And again, we need to do a little better, because as the representative from NEPA told us, we are not measuring in all the areas that matter.
Well,
and this is something we have to improve
the level
on.
Of data collection sounds very insufficient.
Yes, to a point, and that's what we are planning to improve upon, so we can capture the impact of air pollution in the population centers.
Right. Do we have any deadlines for those, for putting in increased?
We're working on it, Dion. As I said, the data has just come in, and we're looking at the attributable deaths, and we're looking at it and where we need to put the extra measuring equipment.
But would it be fair to say then that we are seeing deaths in Jamaica as a result?
Attributable to air pollution? Yes,
Wow.
it is. Yeah.
That's not something we talk about here, though.
Exactly. But as those figures are released, then it will come home more to those above my pay grade,
okay.
And and something will be put in place.
We're seeing this morbidity is going to be higher, because you're going to see a lot of people living with the side effects of these things. So,
Hilton, what else we need to do?
I really feel that the people are telling you that they're seeing it, and if you're saying that it's hard for you to go out and test everywhere, then it's to rely on the citizens then. Is there any mechanism for citizen reporting, for example? You just dial in and say, you see this license plate number, the black smoke is affecting me. If it is a life or death issue, then we have to treat it like a life or death problem. You can report when you see things that are threatening to society. Otherwise, so why not for this as well? But I think we also have to take several steps further, that it's not just the importation of the cars, it's the use of the cars, it's the fact that we just need to restructure all of society. Yes, we need better public transport that people can rely on, that people can actively use, but it's also the mindsets that some people might think that cars are like their freedom, it's their ability to move. But if you have a great transportation system, then you have that freedom. It's just how people look at it. They think of it as more of a poor thing, or I can say as somebody who walk foot, how different it is when they put out the JUTC buses more recently in the last couple of months from when it was before, when they were mostly off the road, how kind of rough it was getting home. The people pile up in the evenings. You can get a bus when you have to stand and you're like, your feet ready for buckle because they're packing the buses so much. And now that they've put it on the road, it's so much more comfortable. I feel completely fine traveling. And I was thinking of getting a car before that happened. So it changes with how, if it's good enough, people will want to use it. But then also, we don't have to be traveling this much. The pandemic taught us something when we had to stay at home, and then as soon as it opened back up, we went back as if everything was normal. We saw birds chirping, we saw fishes, coming back into streams that they weren't for years. And then when we no longer had to stay at home, everybody just went back to normal. And it's not all jobs that need to be in the office 5 days a week. So there's a thought.
Okay. Number of different areas there, because you're saying improve the transportation system. Think about working from home more, so that there are fewer people on the road traveling as well.
Yeah, and support those people to work at home, because it's not as if it's just our choice. It's the businesses, it's the government,
policy
it's
shift
policy
in
shifts,
organizations
exactly.
and so on.
Yeah, the people in your documentary are saying that they have to be on the road, and it's affecting them. But for the people that don't have to be now, make we try to have some consideration. We all live in the society together.
So there's an occupational exposure issue as well to workers.
And the whole thing of town planning, with all these high-rise buildings going up, people would put some offices on the ground floor and people live upstairs.
Just walk. You just take a
Exactly.
walk down the stairs.
Reduce the need to go in a vehicle and drive to work and drive back home.
And
Mhm.
it connects to everything because there's a housing issue where people just don't have availability of housing in the city. So we're traveling so far because of all of that, that we have to be, in the outskirts and all of that. And then if you're talking about city planning, you're thinking about trees and green spaces as well. It purifies the air, but every other minute you see them trying to chop down one because I'm not certain why. I think they just don't like trees.
So Wilson, what else we're going to be expecting going forward?
So as I mentioned earlier, the ITA is committed.
Island Traffic Authority.
Yes, Island Traffic Authority is committed on doing its part in reducing the harmful pollutants which are being emitted by vehicles. So our main focus would be on emissions. As I mentioned before, we have implemented phase 1, where we see to it that all vehicles have at least a catalytic converter, which that, as you know, that device, it converts harmful gases into less harmful gases.
That's something that comes standard?
Yes.
Because I hear you saying, as you know, but I actually don't know. So.
I'm very sorry. Yes. So yeah, these devices have been on cars from the 70s,
Okay.
Yeah. So what happens is that in the event sometimes they fail, which they do, they take them off. Yeah. So with the equipment which we are procuring, Island Traffic Authority, that now will enable us to test the emission levels from the exhaust pipe. Because, as I said, we inspected to see that it is there, but is it functioning properly? Right, so with the equipment that we're procuring, then we'll be able to clamp down on these vehicles which are expelling harmful pollutants.
All right, I'm nearly out of time, so let me ask each person going around the question, going around the table quickly, what's the most important thing we need to do on this issue? Mrs. Hardware.
Me again.
Okay, I'm hearing 1 minute, so everybody has 15 seconds. Most important thing you would say?
The most important thing, we need to move ahead with controlling the emissions from the vehicles right now. We have the standards, they're there. It may be that you need more instrumentation. We have a lot of vehicles to be tested. I also believe that what could help, because we're doing fitness every year, well, they're changing now, but that probably could be added as one of the evaluating tools when you take your vehicle for fitness.
Okay, is it going to be? So?
Well, yes.
Okay. They're telling me I have to come out. That means, so many more questions, so many more issues, but I just have to thank our guests so very much. Really appreciated it. Always appreciate your watching as well. Do come back for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson. On behalf of the news and the production teams, have a great evening. Stay safe. Give thanks.